At Subic Bay, the refugees picked up at sea were impacting the whole process. It was not merely hundreds at a time now, but literally thousands.
Usually, the big merchants would come in with about 6,000 people. Our provost marshal would go out and kind of sort out who wanted to come and who wanted to stay. But the effort was for us to take the ship down to about 3,000, which would make it more comfortable, and the ship then would take the remaining 3,000 and continue on to Guam. During the heaviest period, we were also manifesting and moving out on aircraft 6,000 people a day. If we brought in about 10, we then put about 4 into the camp. And so we kind of used it, during that period, we used the camp as kind of a surge tank. And if they were coming on, if we were taking them onto the island faster than we could put them on the aircraft, they moved them into the camp. And there was no differentiation who they were or what they were. It was just aircraft availability, and the line went into the camp or it went into the manifesting line, just depending on the availability of the aircraft at that moment. That was one plane every 30 minutes, steady around the clock, except that between 4:30 and 6 they had a break in the flight schedule. Otherwise, we either loaded a C-130 or a 141 every 30 minutes, 24 hours a day, and that comes out to 6,000 people a day.
The flights to Guam, direct from Saigon, from Cuby Point, from Clark, were hardly first class. If you haven't flown at about 30,000 feet, where sub-zero temperatures outside make the metal airplane floor almost ice cold, you can't appreciate the ordeal of the 4 to 5 hour flight to Anderson Air Force Base, the busiest of New Life bases.
Passenger service representative's responsibility is to meet incoming and outbound aircraft. What we will do is we will meet the aircraft, analyze how many passengers are on board, brief the passengers, and bring them to the terminal. During the arrival of an aircraft, we were split up into teams, baggage teams, fleet service teams, ramp personnel, and the passenger service people. We would follow the aircraft down the taxiway in a small train-like situation. While approaching the aircraft, I am with constant communications with my dispatcher. He or she is able to let me know exactly how many people are on board the aircraft through radio communications.
This is our passenger service dispatch office and our flight board. Indicated are the flights arriving and departing Anderson Air Force Base. During the New Life operations, it was common to see 2 of these flight boards filled daily. We had flights landing that were taxiing, and we still had not received a parking spot for the aircraft to taxi into. You can see the situation when there is an aircraft occupying every parking spot on the flight line.
After block-in, the action seemed to break loose on the aircraft. Everyone knew what he had to do and did it with perfection. That's the only way that it would work correct.
Service personnel were at the nose docks and at all areas where any of the refugees were. They deplaned the flights, escorted the passengers into the food lines or the appropriate area.
There were many TDY personnel from the support squadrons at Clark, Kadena, Yokota, Hawaii.
Any station that was not going to be directly involved at that particular time were sent here.
Coordination between the people was very good because passenger processing is a standardized career field, and anyone working the career field should be able to adapt very quickly.
Control maintenance 3. Roger, through flight's being completed on 185. Would you send POL out? And I need a little jet specialist also. Roger, number 1 engine, low oil pressure. Roger, 702, thank you. During Operation New Life, there was a tremendous number of personnel, resources, and equipment expended in support of the massive Vietnamese evacuation. We had, at one point, as many as 60 different types of aircraft on the ground at one time, many of them commercial, 707 DC-8s and DC-10s. Excessive number of 141s and C-5s were in addition to that total number. As many as 120 people were sent into the unit, the 605th here at Anderson, in support of the maintenance effort. That's about a 50% increase over our normal maintenance manning. Really tremendous operation.
With Guam facilities filling up, a new surge tank was needed, and Wake Island would be it. The base commander at Hickam was the director of refugee activities at Wake.
You know, Wake Island is a very small island about 2,000 miles due west of Honolulu. During this operation of New Life, it became very apparent to all of us there that we were entirely dependent upon airlift to provide us the supplies in order to provide the necessary environment and living conditions for the refugees at Wake Island.
It's been primarily an emergency type base only. It's a very small complement. It had been in existence in Wake, consisting of only about 5 blue suiters and about 200 contractor personnel. They came in on 141s at about 180 per aircraft. It was quite an experience to see them walk off of an airplane, and I tried to put myself in their place. Suppose all of a sudden that I had been lifted out of my country and I got off of an airplane on a foreign land and all I had was what was on my back, or all of my possessions were in a pillowcase. By the time they had arrived, we had opened up enough houses with the minimum essentials for bedding and so forth, and necessary sanitation facilities to be able to accommodate them. It was really remarkable with the speed with which the Military Airlift Command was able to amass the number of airframes so rapidly, and the response of the supply people to obtain the necessary materials that we needed, not only foodstuffs, but we needed quite a bit in the way of basic building materials and plumbing supplies, and we had to ensure that we did not have some sort of an epidemic develop, so we had to be sure that we had proper sanitation facilities.
Sure, thank you. From a food standpoint, Wake Island was unique. In fact, I haven't experienced anything like it in my 23 years in service. We had 38 Air Force personnel that came from various bases over Packhouse and some from the mainland. They were experienced cooks, and they really enjoyed cooking for the Vietnamese. It was a few days after the first flight arrived before we got the Vietnamese into helping us do the KP. 38 people were doing all the cooking and cleaning and everything. The first flight that arrived, it had something like 360 people on it. We had the one dining hall open at that time. Our plan was to open another dining hall and then 2 other field kitchens. So we built up to somewhere around 8,000 in the final days of the operation. At first, we experienced some difficulty with long lines, especially when the Vietnamese would decide that one dining hall was preparing better food than the other. To correct this problem, we tried color-coded meal cards, and this resolved that problem. Plus, we improved the food in the other dining halls so they'd all be standardized. They told me that we had all the food items that they like and that they eat in Vietnam. But the way we prepared it wasn't exactly to their liking.
About a half a day after their being there, it was really noticeable of how the smiles began to break out. It was just the transformation from the day before to the next day was really unbelievable. And that I noticed on many occasions of going around the base and the dining halls, down in the beach area, that you would see young couples strolling along the beach hand in hand and beginning to really become themselves again.
Things are pretty quiet around here now, but a few months ago during Operation New Life, there was lots of work to be done. There was lots of C-5s, 141s, and commercials coming to the island of Guam to pick up passengers. Approximately 35 to 40 tons of cargo was in the belly of each one of these 747s that had to be offloaded and distributed.
The out-processing was handled in a location known as Tin City. There were anywhere from 1,500 to over 4,500 people, which were staged up from the naval camps. For processing, the people would prepare their documentation and approach us, where we manifested each person and staged them into an isolation area for boarding of the aircraft. When the aircraft was ready for loading, we transported the people to the aircraft, and many of the flights that we worked, we were able to work within about 45 minutes. I'm talking about, I believe the maximum flights that were processed were 385 for 747.
Now the final chapter of this modern epic. Military airlift was responsive to the emergency. Under contract to the Military Airlift Command, American commercial carriers would move 80% of the refugees to resettlement centers on the mainland to begin their new life. From the Philippines, from Guam, from Wake, the airliners would move through Honolulu and eventually to Camp Pendleton, Fort Chaffee, Eglin Air Force Base, and Indiantown Gap in Pennsylvania.
I've been flying with United Airlines now for a little over 15 years. And I think of all the experiences I've had while being up there, certainly the Vietnamese refugee airlift will be one that I'll never forget. One of the things that keeps coming to my mind are some of the children and their behavior on the flights. From a flight attendant's viewpoint, if we could have people like this every trip, our job would be the greatest in the world.
Flying out of Honolulu for almost 3 years. And when Pan Am Scheduling called me one morning to work a refugee flight, I really didn't know what to expect. It depends on where you're coming from, too, you know, where your head's at. You know, I think if you're into people and you love people, I just felt that they have just as much right to be in the United States and breathe air as I do. And that was my impression. When they were just smiling, the happiest, I mean, they just perked up just completely when we landed. And they're just so excited to finally be at their destination and be starting a new life.
The flights kept coming. The refugees were somehow moved on rather quickly in those days from wherever they were, the Philippines, Wake, Guam, or whatever, and came to us in remarkably short order, I thought. As the Social Security and the HEW coordinator at Camp Pendleton, from the very first day, I was able to watch this impressive, huge migration of people. It's been described as one of the largest in the shortest times in American history.
we as a country accepted the responsibility. The citizens came forth after the military had gotten them into the relocation system. I'm pleased and personally proud that we made the effort. People that made it over had made it over to this side under great odds. They had to have something inside that would get them out and fight their way to, as they had to come over here. They gave up fortunes. Some of them were very rich, but a lot of them gave up every dime they had to get on an airplane, to buy their way on a ship, to do whatever they had to do. So they are people that I consider to be future assets to this country. I know that there's going to be many, many future problems in these people becoming a part of our society because they come from a very different society than our own. But I think they'll do it. They're strong people. I know that because of their dedication to work and educational principles and strong family life, that they will indeed make good American citizens.
Give me your tired, your poor, your huddled masses, yearning to breathe free.